So I have a landlord that we're just onboarding now. So new client for my property management company, and he's coming to us in distress. He owns a duplex in Fishtown here in Philadelphia, and I guess the one unit has a tenant that's not paying us rent. And according to the landlord, I don't know. We've just put the owner on yesterday. We're just when we put on a new owner, especially one that's in distress, it takes a little bit of effort for us to kind of unravel what's going on. But according to the landlord, the tenant hasn't been paying his rent, which is obviously believable, and hasn't been, it is indicated he's not willing to pay the rent. Now, the landlord's been waiting until the lease is done under the kind of that hopium, that hope that this problem's going to go away on its own, and that the tenant at lease end will simply move out. Well, of course, the tenant didn't simply move out, so now he has a holdover tenant and one who's not willing to pay his rent. So now he actually has a big problem. So he should have acted much sooner and at least begun the eviction process to get the tenant out. But I think a lot of times we just hope the problem's going to go away. We get ourselves in a bad situation, and if the tenant just simply leaves, that's going to be great and problem solved, or at least a majority of the problem is going to be solved. So you just kind of hold on to that rather than having to spend the money and going through the effort to maybe do it right. This landlord is in distress, and he asked me if, in the tenant's lease, the tenant is required to pay the utility, to put the utilities in his name. Well, the tenant never put the utilities in his name. So the landlord's been having to pay the tenant's utilities all this time. And the landlord asked me a very valid question, saying, hey, it's in the lease that the tenant's supposed to put the utilities in his name. Can I just turn the utilities off? And that's a valid question, but the answer to that, and I'm not an attorney, I can't give legal advice. I'm just a real estate broker as an experienced property management company owner, but that doesn't qualify me to give you legal advice. But in my opinion, no, that absolutely is positively not something you can do. I know how infuriating it is and how expensive it is having to pay the utilities for a tenant who's supposed to be paying the utilities. And of course, the tenant doesn't care how high the utilities are, so they'll willingly leave the windows open in wintertime and just crank the temperature up to 100 degrees. I understand how frustrating it is, but that basically gets into kind of a self-help eviction, which is extremely illegal. So you can't actually take any steps to illegally get the tenant to exit. So absolutely positively not. You cannot turn off the utilities or take any actions along the lines of that. You can't flip breakers, you can't remove doors, you really have to be really careful. I mean, I go to landlord tenant court, and there are a lot of really bad, very stupid landlords out of here doing really crazy, stupid stuff, such as removing doors from units, saying that the door needs to be fixed, and they're going to remove the door, and it's going to take many weeks to fix the door. So now the tenant has an open, gaping hole. No, the court's not stupid. The judges are not stupid. That's criminal. You're going to get yourself into a whole lot of trouble. Valid question about the utilities. Absolutely. I totally get it. It makes sense to me that someone would ask that question, but the answer would be very clear no. Unfortunately, you have to keep the utilities in your name. Unfortunately, you have to keep paying the utility bills. You can go after the tenant since it is their contractual obligation to pay the utilities, but you cannot turn the utilities off. All right? Just a humble Philadelphia property management company owner doing my best to answer your rental property investing questions. And as always, happy rental property investing.